over a comprehensive reform.
Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has arrived in New Delhi to attend the 77th Republic Day celebrations as the chief guest and to finalize an India-EU trade deal. The Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara has announced a government reshuffle in which most ministers kept their posts, while his brother Tene Birahima Ouattara has retained the defense portfolio and was also named Deputy Prime Minister. The move follows Ouattara's fourth-term re-election with nearly 90% of the vote. IMF officials are expected to visit Libreville in February to assess Gabon's economic situation and discuss reform plans, as Finance Minister highlighted the technical talks with the fund have intensified despite no formal loan request. Gabon's debt has risen to about 80% of GDP amid a persistent current account deficit. According to the Chinese Ministry of National Defense, China's Defense Ministry has placed two of its most senior generals, Zhang Yuxia, first vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, and Liu Zhenli, chief of the Joint Staff Department, that are both under investigation for suspected serious violations of discipline and law. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called Trump remarks about NATO troops in Afghanistan appalling, as Prince Harry has said that their sacrifices deserve respect. Trump has accused Canada of blocking the Golden Dome project over Greenland and warns of closer China ties. This comes as Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen calls the situation serious in Nuuk and says Denmark and Greenland will act together. Seven people have passed away and 82 people are missing after a landslide in the West Bandung region of Indonesia's West Java. Amid heavy rains, a landslide covered an unspecified residential settlement as well. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is in Shanghai as this US chip giant faces fierce competition from local rivals and scrutiny from Chinese authorities. Now for this hour, we start from India. Today, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has arrived in New Delhi as the chief guest for India's 77th Republic Day celebrations and to finalize a major trade deal with India. The two sides are expected to announce the conclusion of protracted negotiations for a free trade pact on 27th of January. This deal is set to reduce tariffs on European cars and wine while expanding the market for Indian electronics, textiles and chemicals. Additionally, India and the EU are expected to sign a security and defense pact along with a mobility agreement for high-skilled workers and students. The agreement will be finalized during a summit co-chaired by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, European Council President Antonio Costa, and von der Leyen as well, marking a significant step in India-EU relations. Now for this discussion, we welcome retired Major General Gigi Dwivedi. He's a defense analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us. Today, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has arrived in New Delhi as the chief guest for India's 77th Republic Day celebrations and to finalize a major trade deal with India. The two sides are expected to announce the conclusion of protracted negotiations for a free trade pact on 27 January. This deal is set to reduce tariffs on European cars and wine while expanding the market for Indian electronics and textiles, as well as chemicals. Additionally, India and the EU are expected to sign Security and Defense Pact along with a mobility agreement for high-skilled workers and students. The agreements will be finalized during a summit co-chaired by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, European Council President Antonio Costa, and von der Leyen, marking a significant step in India-EU relations. Today, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has arrived in New Delhi as a chief guest for India's 77th Republic Day celebration and to finalize a major trade deal with India. The two sides are expected to announce the conclusion of protracted negotiations for a free trade pact on 27th of January. This deal is set to reduce tariffs on European cars and wine while expanding the market for Indian electronics, textiles, and chemicals. Additionally, India and EU are expected to sign a security and defense pact with a mobility agreement for high-skilled workers and students as well. The agreement will be finalized during a summit co-chaired by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, European Council President Antonio Costa, and von der Leyen, marking a significant step in India-EU relations. Now moving on to Ukraine and Russia. The first high-level trilateral negotiations between Ukraine and Russia and the United States in Abu Dhabi have ended, marking a pivotal moment in efforts to end the nearly four-year war. US-mediated talks focused on a 28-point peace plan addressing territorial arrangements and security guarantees. Russia demands Ukraine's withdrawal from 20 to 25% of the Donbas region, while Ukraine counters with a proposal for a mutual withdrawal to create a demilitarized zone. Ukraine's President Zelensky has secured finalized security guarantees, with US President Donald Trump pending approval by their governments. Meanwhile, Russia's proposal to use $5 billion in frozen assets for reconstruction has been rejected by Zelensky. Despite these talks, Russia has launched several airstrikes, escalating the tensions, and no concrete agreements have been reached as of now, with Zelensky stating that it is too soon for conclusions, urging Russia to prove its commitment to peace. The first high-level trilateral negotiations between Ukraine and Russia and the United States in Abu Dhabi have ended, marking a pivotal moment in efforts to end the nearly 4 years of war. US-mediated talks focused on a 28-point peace plan addressing territorial agreements and security guarantees. Russia demands Ukraine's withdrawal from 20 to 25% of the Donbas region, while Ukraine counters with a proposal for mutual withdrawal to create a demilitarized zone. Ukraine's President Zelensky has secured finalized security guarantees with US President Donald Trump pending approval by their governments. Meanwhile, Russia's proposal to use $5 billion in frozen Russian assets for reconstruction has been rejected by Zelensky. Despite these talks, Russia has launched severe airstrikes, escalating the tensions, and no concrete agreements have been reached as of now, with Zelensky stating that it is too soon for conclusions, urging Russia to prove its commitment to peace. Now for this discussion, we welcome retired Major General Gigi Dwivedi. He's a defense analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, as you know, we have entered the trilateral talks from bilateral. What do you think has changed, and do you think that things will be smoother than before?
Well, the point is that it's too early to say whether the things will be smoother, because now there are three parties to it: the US, Russia, and Ukraine. But the point is that we need to understand as to what exactly are the conditions which are laid down by the two sides. As far as reports are there that Russia is laid down a precondition that Ukraine hands over Donbass area to Russia, and that's one of the preconditions. But one of the sticking points that have been there is that Ukraine is not willing to trade off the territory for peace, and they have said that any trade-off in territory will be directly impinging on their sovereignty. So therefore, I exactly don't know where the talks are, but I don't think that in the first round of talks or uh, there would be any kind of settlement. But the point is that peace process is going to, if at all it fructifies, will be in stages. First, maybe the ceasefire, and then possibly the mechanism how to ensure that ceasefire is on the ground, and then, of course, larger peace agreement. But I think it's too early to make a guess as to what exactly the outcome of the talks, because the preconditions which have been laid down are not acceptable to either side. Asuma.
How do you see the trust levels of Ukraine and Ukraine's trust towards U.S. right now?
Well, I think there's definitely a trust deficit, because the whole proposal of the peace agreement which President Trump or the Americans have put on is that Ukraine or President Zelensky must be willing to trade off territory for peace. And as per the indications from the American side of President Trump is that water territory has been taken over by Russia. That should be accepted as the current status quo. But that is not the position of the Ukraine. And on the face of it, definitely the proposals put up by President Trump or by Americans are in favor of Russia, and they imply willy-nilly that trade-off of territory be accepted for any kind of peace. And the second point is that as far as Europe is concerned, they are not on the same page, because Europeans have, there was a conference recently in Brussels, and possibly there is some understanding that they will, back up Ukraine through finances and also through the military aid. But in case this precedent is set that you can grab territory by force, then this will have serious implications for the European security per se. Asuma.
Right. So, and do you think that U.S. was pushing their own agenda too hard that has ended up in this consequence, like, the trilateral, and also the fact that it has been moved to Middle East, that these talks, and also adding all of them, three, on the same table now?
Well, Asuma, the point is that if we go through the national security strategy, which was released last December, it categorically mentioned 2-3 very important facets. Well, first and foremost, that Europe or the NATO policy, as far as Russia is concerned, has actually not succeeded. And in the national security strategy, Europe has been admonished to strike or to change their policy vis-a-vis Russia. And President Trump is known to be a very pro-Russian president, and therefore I think the agenda has been almost forced upon Ukraine. But the point is whether Ukraine will accept it or not, that's the point. But given the Europe backing, and Europe today, the relations between Europe and America are very tense or strained, because the transatlantic pact or the partnership itself is actually under serious trial. So I don't know exactly where the talks will be headed for, but for the timing it appears that there could be a stalemate, or there could be really no progress, and they may have to talk more to move the agenda. And I think America may have to show flexibility as far as the Zelensky or Ukraine territory trade-off or the sovereignty part is concerned. Otherwise, the positions are quite fixed, and the talks may be there, but they may not yield in very tangible result. Asuma.
Thank you very much, Major General, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now, we stay on this news. Ukrainian and Russian and U.S. delegations have met in the United Arab Emirates for talks on the war. The residents of the eastern Ukrainian city of Pavlorad react with a mix of weary hope and deep skepticism, reflecting years of fighting and loss. Let's listen into what the residents have shared.
Чи можна визначати? Я думаю, що це всі ждали самі. Всі ж нереально там дати кацапам підфіст на сванку, да, так якось домовлятись. Тобто ми всі захищаємо свою територію, але це ж нереально. Всі це прекрасно розуміють військові ведення.
Нет, война это деньги, знаешь, большие деньги, блядь. И никому не выгодно, чтобы она заканчивалась. Только пацаны это зря. Поверь, у меня он рука вся, блядь, порезанная, покоцанная, нахуй. Я там, блядь, посмотрел вот это все нищеты. Меня не масло. Я ничего говорить не буду.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Major General Gigi Dwivedi. Thank you very much, Major General, for staying with us. As you were, in our previous discussion, you were mentioning the defense strategy that we saw last year in December. Do you think that has something to do with current U.S. and Russia's alignment or trust between them?
Yes, because as I said, that President Trump is very highly pro-Russia, and even when the talks were there held in Alaska, last year, President Trump had shown, I think, quite a flexibility as far as the Russian position is concerned. And primarily, this is the war over territory. And Russia has not been able to achieve its preset aims to at least, secure or capture sizable chunk of, Ukrainian territory. So until that, aim is met, I don't think Russians are going to come on the table. So therefore, currently, once again, they have stated that they are interested in, Donbas area, because that gives them the at least secure defense line. And currently the almost the 1400 kilometer line is held very strongly by the Ukrainians, while they have lost some territory, but Russians have paid a very heavy price. So the point at this issue at this time is that the front is quite stable, and Ukrainians are prepared to fight on, provided they get sufficient funding and also the weapon system, because today major problem with the Ukrainian is that they don't have the air assets, and they are primarily using the missiles and the drones, and on the ground also they are short of the equipment. So as long as Europe supports Ukraine, I think they will hold on. And I don't think that Zelensky or Ukraine are going to trade off the territory lest there's something very significant to gain. But at this time, while the winters are very hard winters, the ground operations are almost standstill. Nothing much is happening. Primarily, it is the air war and the drone warfare, which again the Ukrainians are taking certain amount of and giving certain amount of attrition on the Russian forces and striking deep. So I don't know whether there is any tangible progress, but nonetheless, as far as today is concerned, there are two dimensions. Politically, Trump is backing President Putin and insisting on Ukraine and Zelensky to trade off territory for peace. But the situation on the ground is as much of stalemate as it is on the negotiation table. So I don't think at this time not much progress have been made, and Zelensky or Ukraine are trying to ward off the pressure from the Americans, of course, with the support of European Union and the NATO. And today, that support is more forthcoming because of the current tension and the strained relation between Europe and America. Assume.
With that, I would like to thank our retired Major General Gigi Dwivedi for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Middle East. The Israel Defense Forces have said that they have concluded a major military operation in Hebron in the southern West Bank. The IDF reports detaining 14 Palestinians suspected of terrorism activity, searching for more than 350 buildings and seizing 8 firearms during the operation aimed at disrupting militant infrastructure. Meanwhile, Israel's cabinet is scheduled to hold a key meeting on Sunday to review the situation in Gaza. These updates come as Israeli media reports that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to meet U.S. Special Envoy for Middle East Affairs Steve Witkoff and other American officials today evening. Discussions are expected to focus on the return of the last body that's the remaining Israeli hostage, and the efforts to dismantle Hamas's military capabilities. Witkoff is also expected to be joined by Jared Kushner, a senior White House advisor, during the visit. While U.S. Central Command Commander General Brad Cooper is also due to arrive in Israel, marking his first visit since September last year. Now for this, we welcome Mr. Matti Zweig. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you, Atuma.
Thank you. Now, looking at this, what can we expect from the U.S. and Israeli talks that are supposed to happen tomorrow?
Well, they are talking all the time. This is not new.
Yes.
But now, in a personal way, the general is coming and having a more internal prospect of what is going on the ground, because you must understand, I mean, the understandings about the second phase have been done. With Board of Peace or without Board of Peace, Israel understands that there's going to be a second phase, that they are asking, as it was agreed, that the Hamas must be dismantled. In the meanwhile, Hamas is in a lot of parts of the Gaza Strip trying to maintain their power there, and Israel is every time they are attacking them or coming to the yellow line, defending themselves or even attacking them if they see some suspicious activities. So they must have everything synchronized for what is going to be. Now that it's going to be a Board of Peace, and now that some soldiers maybe are going to be with boots on the ground, of course not the ones that Israel is completely opposed, like Turkey or Qatar, but they are going to help in humanitarian aid, and especially for themselves, putting them companies to construct again in Rafah and Rafah, or in the coast or in other areas, that they are going to start rebuilding, reshuffling everything. Of course, first cleaning millions of tons of rubble, etc. So they must synchronize all these, and they must synchronize also how to cope with the fears of the Israeli side, that if this international coalition is not going really to function and to remove the military capabilities of Hamas, so nothing good is going to come after this. Maybe fights are going to renew, so all the efforts to reshuffle and to rebuild are going to be in vain. So this is what they are talking about especially, but of course they are talking about other things, as you suppose, as everybody can suppose, about what is happening in Syria, what is happening in Iran maybe. So everything must be synchronized in these talks.
Right. So about Gaza's phase 2, as U.S. pushes, but of course the last hostage body hasn't been returned yet, and also some disagreements are there between Israel and U.S. What do you think would be both of their priorities? Is there any difference in their priorities?
I think that it's very clear for Israel what are the U.S. interests. The U.S. interests, the world doesn't look at it, but they are not crystal clear one with the other all the time in all the things. They have differences, and every country wants to protect their own interest. And in addition, from the Israeli side, there is also a government that tries to protect their interest inside the Israeli interests. which means not to look at the Israeli public in a year of elections like it's 2026, like it's giving up a lot in their efforts of never permitting to anyone in the Gaza Strip or any other place to try to threat Israel again as they did in 7th of October 23. So this is, I mean, a basic thing for every government, but especially for this government that is seen for a vast majority of at least 60% of the Israeli public as a failure in many, many areas and not just about what happened with Hamas. So they are trying to be, to show the public in Israel that they are fighting for their interests in a hard way, and then they have to cope with the U.S. interests that they are trying also to calm all the interests of countries like Turkey and Qatar especially, but also to put everything in one package. And it's not a coincidence that before me you were talking about Ukraine and Russia, because this is all part of a big package that can calm both areas at the same time. And I think key of the thing is weakening the Iran's regime. If they are really going to be weakened, both conflicts are going to be much easier of solve.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Zweig for joining us from Tel Aviv and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. World Economic Forum President Borj Brende has said that the global trade landscape is shifting, with artificial intelligence and digital commerce becoming the new drivers of growth. Speaking ahead of the WEF's 2026 annual meeting, Brende noted a shift in trade patterns where traditional trade in manufactured goods is growing much more slowly compared to overall trade. He has pointed out that digital trade and services are experiencing exponential growth, while sectors like manufactured goods see slower growth. Brende has emphasized that countries leading in AI and frontier technologies such as China and the US will shape future global commerce and drive economic growth. Let's listen into what WEF President Borj Brende has said.
Exponential growth and demand in digital trade and services, while traditional like manufactured goods, we see slower growth. We also see that where the big investments are going now is in the AI centers, in all the frontier technologies. And that's what is driving growth. So the nations that will do well in the future are those that are also very well prepared for the new technologies. And I don't think there is any big secret that both China and the US are quite leading in this area, and they're competing. That's what we are, of course, all following very closely.
That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.